Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday Mull for Friday the 13th of August. We continue looking at David's wonderful prayer of offering and thanksgiving as he and the people contribute resources towards building a temple for God, a project that Solomon would take up. And we saw how David begins by saying we need to praise God because everything is yours, is the power, the glory, the splendor, the majesty, everything is God's. And then he recognizes wealth and honor comes from God. All that we have comes from God. And therefore, we give you thanks and praise because of what God has done for us. And we don't deserve it. We are of no real account. Verse 14, who am I and who are my people that we should be able to give as generously as this? Everything comes from you, and we have given you only what comes from your hand. Everything is God's, and all that we have is God's. We are God's, and without God, nothing would be here. We wouldn't last a millisecond if God didn't enable us to. And so we are entirely dependent on God. Everything comes from you, and what we are giving you is yours anyway. We give you only what comes from your hand. And David then recognizes we are foreigners and strangers in your sight. We are all, as were all our ancestors. Our days on earth are like a shadow without hope. Recognizing life is fleeting. And ultimately, in this world, the vast majority of us are insignificant. David wrote this 3,500 years ago. How many generations have lived subsequent to that? How many of them are remembered? And when we think of even somebody like David, the complex and busy and complicated life he lived, we have but a fraction of it recorded. And the vast majority of people live out their days as a passing breath. They grow up as the grass of the field, which is here today and gone tomorrow. We are ultimately insignificant in the great scheme of things. And yet we can worship God, and God receives from us. David continues, Lord our God, all this abundance that we've provided for building you a temple for your holy name comes from your hand, and all of it belongs to you. And so as we give to God, we recognize everything we have actually belongs to God. We belong to God. So we have nothing of our own, and there's nothing God needs, and yet we can offer it to him, and he accepts it with joy and with love. And so whatever it is that you're offering God, whether it is your money and your tithe and giving resources, that's fantastic. Offer it to God, recognizing this is God's, and we're giving it back to him. But if it's your time and your talents, possibly reading through a contract that has to be signed and giving legal advice on it, helping sort out church insurance policies, which has to be done. And people are skilled to be able to do that. Flower arranging, doing the garden, cooking soup for the soup kitchen. Whatever it is you're offering, you are enabled to do it by God. God has given you that ability. It all comes from God. And we offer it back to him. And the amazing thing is that God accepts it and rejoices in it and loves us despite ourselves. And so as you give your time, your energy, your effort, your words, your resources to God, know that it all comes from him. He doesn't depend on it, but he receives it with joy. And he looks at us and says, well done. You are beloved of your Father. Know that and be encouraged.